Hello, Lainey.
Well, hello, Grace Caternolo. How's it going?
It's going well. Fancy seeing you here.
I used your full name. I feel like
No, like my government name.
the government name. Hello, everyone. We're so excited to be here for our next Writers to Watch program. If you're new here, welcome. We have an author event every month where we have about four, sometimes three authors on to tell us about new books, new upcoming books, and just get librarians excited for these reads. And today is no different. We have an amazing group of authors. We are going to hear from Ann Packer, Grace Walker, Jasmin Iolani Hakes, and Nicole Glover. So you are in for a treat of a night. So before we get going, I just want to tell you and remind you that if you are a part of our Crowdcast group, we also do this on Facebook, but if you are on Crowdcast, you get a very nice perk. Grace, do you want to tell them what their perk is?
Yeah, so before the program, we will be sending you a NetGalley widget. So you are pre-approved for the download of the NetGalley e-galleys available. So keep an eye out for that. And then, we of course we encourage you to read ahead of time and bring your questions because we always have time for questions at the end from all of you. And I know it's always really fun to hear directly from you and not just me and Lainey.
Yes, any questions you have, you can use the question box. You can put it in the chat. We will we will try to get what we can. Or if you have any nice comments, that's always nice to see too. But I will say, somebody asked me, well, I can't join live. How do I ask my question? You can always email us anytime. We'll be happy to ask your question live if we can get to it. So without further ado, I think we should get going and get started. What do you think, Grace?
I'm ready. Are you ready?
All right, let's go. So I'm going to welcome on screen Ann Packer. Hello.
Hello, hi.
How are you?
Great, and so glad to be here.
Good. We're so happy to have you. I want to do I want to get my screen to move where I can see. And then I want to do a quick introduction and then I want to hear more about Some Bright Nowhere. So thank you for being here. Ann Packer is the author of five previous novels of fiction, including the best-selling novel The Children's Crusade and The Dive from Clausen's Pier, which received a Kate Chopin Literary Award, among many other prizes and honors. Her short fiction has appeared in The New Yorker and the O. Henry Prize Stories Anthology, and her novels have been published around the world. She divides her time among New York and the Bay Area and Maine. So we're happy to have her here virtually to tell us more about Some Bright Nowhere coming November 11th. So I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you so much. And the only question I have is, how do there we go. I thought I was going to be talking over the book cover, and I am one of those people who, while on a Zoom, periodically checks in with their own image. I don't know if other people ever do that, but I'm one of those. So anyway, I'm thrilled to be here. Very happy to be talking to a group of librarians who I always feel are doing God's work. Some Bright Nowhere is a novel about a long married couple, Elliot and Claire, and Claire is reaching the final stages of a long illness. And the entire novel is told from Elliot's point of view. And the premise is that he's been taking care of her ever since her initial diagnosis, which is 8 years before the start of the book. He's now retired to have more time to care for her as she's gotten more sick. And he expects that to be, the pattern for the rest of her days, which are now probably down to about 3 months. She's entered hospice. They've, gathered family and friends, and he has a clear vision of how this is going to go. And Claire has a different vision. Um, what happens is Claire decides that she would rather have her two closest female friends move in and take care of her during her final days, and for her husband Elliot to actually move out. And that's her request. That's what she wants of him. And the book really looks at how he processes the request, how he makes a decision about what to do, how that affects everyone in their world, from the two friends who are standing by waiting to move in if they're going to be needed, to Elliot and Claire's two adult children, Abby and Josh. And really what the book does is really cause a reckoning within the family and very much internally for Elliot, as you know, the days pass and he has to sort of grapple with the husband, the man he's been, and sort of steel himself for whatever these last days are going to bring. People have asked me sort of like, where did you get this idea? And in fact, this is maybe going back almost 20 years. Um, I was in a conversation with a woman I didn't know very well about our mutual friend who had cancer. And this woman told me that she'd heard of a situation where a woman was at the end stage of her illness, and her husband was deemed not adequate to the task of taking care of her. And so he moved out, and her two friends moved in and gave her whatever it was she wanted in her final days and weeks. I was just flabbergasted by this idea. I couldn't believe it, and it just really, really stayed with me. I mean, I really, really understood the sort of motivation of Claire, and although she wasn't Claire, she was just a stranger at that point, but of the woman at the center, the women at the center, and the idea of, you know, a sort of female embrace of a woman as she's going through this passage. Um, you know, there's a rich history really of women being caretakers, but I just felt so bad for the man and really wondered how he would tolerate this circumstance. And it's sort of funny, when I first thought about using this material for a novel, I thought I would probably do multiple points of view, and I started writing. And I started with the woman who was ill, and I wrote a bunch of pages in her point of view. And then I moved on to one of her friends and wrote a whole bunch of pages in her point of view. And I thought then I would go to the third friend, and then the novel would end with the husband's point of view. And I just kind of ran out of steam. It wasn't feeling compelling. It didn't really grab me, and I just set it aside. It was a period of time when I was setting aside a lot of ideas for novels. It was not fun. But then I started thinking, why? Like, what was wrong? And it occurred to me that what was really interesting for me was what the husband would go through, what his point of view would be. Um, and so I started over. And as I always do when I am writing, the names of the characters are really important. So I went from calling them Jane and Tom to calling them Claire and Elliot. And that sort of gave me the boost I needed to put the material that I already had written behind me, and to really just start fresh. Although one thing, I did bring one thing with me, which was when I was imagining the multiple point of view version, I imagined Elliot outside a house in Maine and the women inside the house in Maine, and a very tense, volatile scene or situation. And that actually made it into this book. And I don't want to say more about that because it might give away some important plot points, but I think that is maybe a good place to stop. Have I spent the right
Yeah.
amount of time?
No, that was perfect. And it was such a beautiful book. I felt myself on the roller coaster of emotions, the not even the grief, just the like kind of heartbreak and then the acceptance. And I kept thinking to myself, I, my main problem would be what everyone else thought. And I feel like that's such a thing of society, isn't it? But it was such a good thought experiment too. Not only just these wonderful characters and that world building and understanding, but I just really thought, I feel like the mirror was up to myself too while reading it. Um, and so we have some really great quotes coming in, and this is like hot off the press, like literally before I got on this event. But we have a book list starred review in October. So some bright nowhere sending a starred review. But we just have so much love for this book coming through, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you. My
Sure.
pleasure.
All right. Well, we'll see you go back to the virtual green room and we'll see. And then we're going to welcome on, let me get my notes. We're going to go next to Grace Walker. Come on screen.
Hello.
Hi. So
Hi.
Grace is in the UK and staying up very late for us. We're very thankful that you're doing that. And we've heard you've been supplied with coffee, so you're okay.
I'm well caffeinated, yes.
Okay, good.
I'm just so excited because this is one of my first opportunities to talk about the merge, so really excited.
That's so exciting. Well, we're honored to be the first. And honestly, you're not the first person to tell us that. Even people who have written not even their debut, just other books, it's the first time. Librarians are usually the first ones to hear. And we feel like what needs to be said usually comes out. But it's kind of like a work in progress. So they're going to be so excited to hear everything you have to say. So I'm going to do an intro and then I want to hear more about the merge. Let me get it back on screen so you can see this really cool cover. So The Merge by Grace Walker. So Grace Walker is a debut novelist, apps all around, from Surrey, England, and she works as an English teacher, delighting in helping children discover the magic of reading. Like her protagonist Amelia, she has a background in video production and spent time working as a wedding videographer. Grace writes fiction that blends speculative ideas with intimate human stories. The Merge is her debut novel and publishes on November 11th as well. We have two November 11ths. So I'm going to turn it over to you to tell us more about The Merge.
Okay, so I suppose the very first time that I explored the idea behind the merge was actually in a short story that I wrote for a very local literary festival competition. And it ended up winning. And as part of that prize, I was invited onto the stage to talk about my story. And I just remember being so excited by this strange concept that I'd come up with. And the more I was being asked about it, the more I wanted to find out myself. So that was kind of how the merge started. And in writing the novel, I managed to delve into those parts that I wasn't able to fully explore in the short story. So that's really where it started. And what it became was a speculative fiction dystopian novel. And it's set at a time when Earth and its resources are at their breaking point. And in order to try and combat overpopulation and resource scarcity, there's this radical procedure that's been rolled out across the United Kingdom. And what it does, this is the merge, and it allows two people's consciousnesses to exist in one body. So you could take whoever you wanted, maybe your partner, and you could say, we're not going to get married, we're going to take it a step further, we're going to literally live in one body and be one person. And the people that go through with it and they decide to merge are called combines, and they have endless benefits in society. So to be a combine means it have very low taxes, better education opportunities, employment opportunities, free housing. The benefits are endless. And then for the people who decide, actually, I kind of want to remain me, I don't want to go through with this, they're very much met with the opposite. So they have this huge spike in their taxes. They have really very limited opportunities in education and employment, and many of them can no longer afford their homes, so they're being forced out of their homes into these government-owned apartments. So it's really not a very nice place to be, whilst also being villainized in the media. And so the procedure itself is really divisive. And in society, you have some people thinking, this is fantastic, this is salvation, let's all do it. And other people saying, well, this is immoral and it's a dehumanizing experiment and we need to say no. And the novel follows Laurie, who is the mother with Alzheimer's, and her daughter Amelia, and they are both very much against the merge. And they're very vocal in their outrage. But when they are provided with the opportunity to take part in the world's first merging experiment for people with Alzheimer's, and they have this possibility presented to them that Laurie could live on inside her daughter and she doesn't need to be lost to this disease, they then find themselves with this impossible decision. Do they stick with their morals and say no, or do they put their principles to one side and say, actually, we'll go through with it in order to not lose Laurie? So they have about 3 months to decide what they're going to do, and the novel follows them as they partake the mandatory preparation if they do go through with it. And there, when they are preparing, they meet lots of different partners who are in equally desperate situations. There's Lara, who is a recovering addict, and her father, Jay, who is desperate to keep her safe and alive. There is Noah, who has terminal cancer, and his brother Lucas, who will do anything to save him. And then there's Annie and there's Ben, and they are due to become parents for the first time. And they believe that merging is the only way that they can protect their future financially, practically, morally. And so all of them are in equally volatile situations. And the novel follows all of them as they prepare for this life-changing experiment, and as they uncover the hidden truths behind the merge and discover really what it means to give yourself over to it.
That was great. I'm really glad you went into all of the characters too, because there's a lot of different stories coming and different reasons for choosing this. And I thought I saw on Instagram you had posted some things like what you want to read after Severance. And I think that that's a great thing to think about, because I was trying to fill that hole in my heart, but I thought you did such a great job pacing this with it's like a thrilling novel, like what's going to happen, what's the kind of darker thing in the background happening here. But I thought, just the characters and understanding, getting into their brains as they're trying to combine brains, essentially.
Mm.
It was just so beautiful about memory and the mother-daughter relationship. So, I mean, it just balanced so well. And I just want to read this Publishers Weekly quote. Impressive. Walker effectively blends climate dystopia and body horror, especially in the novel's chilling final twist. And that's all we'll say, because we don't want to give anything away. But it is thrilling. So thank you for sharing, and we can't wait to have you back on in a few minutes.
Right. I am going to welcome on Jasmin Iolani Hakes. Hello.
Hi.
So good to see you. We were talking about before, you were like in our first episode ever of Writers to Watch nearly 3 years ago. So it's really great to have you back.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm gonna read a quick bio and then I'll have you tell everyone about the POHAKU. So Jasmin Iolani Hakes was born and raised in Hilo, Hawaii. She is the author of the novel Hula, the winner of the Honolulu Magazine's 2024 Book of the Year, and a Library Reads bonus pick. Her essays have appeared in the Los Angeles Times, the Sacramento Bee. She is the recipient of the Best Fiction Award from the Southern California Writers Conference, a Squaw Valley Lojo Foundation Scholarship, a Writing by Writers Emerging Voices Fellowship, and a Hedgebrook residency. And she lives in California. So, Jasmin, thank you so much for being here. And I'm gonna pass the mic off to you.
Thank you. As somebody who grew up in a very rural place with very limited resources, the library was my education. It was my everything. I shelved books through high school. So I feel like a library in a town is its most valuable asset. So I'm very glad to be here. Anyway, so when I first moved from Hawaii to California, I moved to Sacramento and I had no aspirations or dare dream about being a writer, but I went with my very young daughter at the time on a field trip to Sutter's Fort. The first thing that we saw when you walk into the fort was a blown up kind of illumination of a couple of John Sutter's diary entries. And all of them started the same way. They all said, if not for my Kanakas, thank you to my Kanakas. Kanaka is another word for Hawaiian. And I was, of course, kind of shocked. I'd never heard of any Hawaiians in Northern California or anything like that. Didn't know any of that history. So I asked our guide, what's the deal? And he said, oh, these 10 Hawaiians, came with John Sutter and were pretty kind of critical to what he tried to do in Sacramento. But that's all. There's no names. He goes, that's all we know. And so for the next 20 years, I kind of tried to find out anything I could about these people and found out enough to know that their stories were incredibly, the first structure of Sutter's Fort was a Hawaiian hut. And, they were critical to finding gold. They built the mill. There were all these things that I was kind of uncovering without it specifically naming any Hawaiians or giving any credit. I was trying to read in between the lines. So as I started kind of realizing that, hey, somebody has to use fiction to write something about this group of 10 Hawaiians that played such a critical role in California history, nobody was going to, do that. And it was a very intimidating thing to even try to aspire to, rewriting California gold rush history. But I kept researching. And as I kept researching, I kept coming up with the limitations of, like, at that time, not a lot of people were recording what any indigenous culture was doing, much less Hawaiians, that were just coming, this relative small group of them. So I started to think, I need to find the families that live in the foothills of Northern California, because somewhere this living history is exists and being told over the table at grandma's house or whatever. And I didn't know how to find that family. I didn't know how to kind of research that. I couldn't kind of put out an ad in a paper. And that is really where the scaffolding of the POHAKU started, of this concept of our history, what really happened in our world and what really happens every day isn't necessarily recorded in history books. What we get is a very small amount, right? What really reflects who we are and where we come from and how we came to be, it's the stories we inherit. And so the book really kind of evolved into kind of a testament to the power of our stories. And so it's basically a grandmother telling her granddaughter whose health is in jeopardy, the story of their history kind of before it's too late. And because if she passes, this history just disappears, and the knowledge of this POHAKU. And the POHAKU kind of is a symbol that ties in over basically 300 years of California and Hawaiian history and their relationship between the two. So, I don't know what more I can get into the structure of it, but it was really fun to kind of bring to life all of these very real things and find a way to glue them together. And I wanted to write a story that was just parallel to truth, so that when you maybe see certain things in Hawaii and you see certain things in California, and especially Northern California, you start kind of thinking, oh, that's very plausible that this could have happened, and so I tried to make it as close to what I could find as possible. And it was really fascinating, even doing the research. I just would go and drive foothills of Northern California through old gold rush company, and I would find, tiny little streets that led to nowhere that said Queen Liliuokalani Boulevard or Kanaka Village, and so it was really fun to write. It's really fun for me to talk about, and I hope it'll be really fun to read. So
Thank you so much. I love that, the research kind of took you on this physical journey as well. It's very, very cool.
yeah.
I was going to read a quote by Laura Worrell, but actually I'm going to read a comment by one of our librarians who said, I am really excited for the POHAKU and hoping it teaches me even more than Hula did about Hawaiian culture and history. So got a lot of librarian fans, and I think you're like the queen of like family sagas at this point. So
Totally on accident. I'm not even a historian. I just, it's just amazing to research. Yeah.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to welcome on Nicole.
Hello, hello.
So excited to have you here. Thank you for being
Yes.
here. Um, we don't have a cover for your book yet,
No,
but it's in
no.
the works. So
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. I saw something actually this week. So
ooh,
hopefully within the next few weeks we'll see something official out
yeah.
there in the world. It's very lovely. I can say that as much.
Oh, I'm excited to see it. I haven't seen anything yet, so I'm excited to see. So you also wrote a book with um historical elements, but also fantastical.
Mm,
So I want to do a
yes.
quick bio and then
Mm,
pass it off to you. Nicole Glover is the author of The Conductors and The Undertakers, as well as The Improvisers in the Murder and Magic series. When she's not writing, she works as a UX researcher in Virginia, where her knowledge about murder and other mysteries is surprisingly useful. And I'm going to be asking you more about that later because I'm
yes.
really curious. So thank you so much, Nicole, and
Yeah.
I'll speak to the Star Seekers.
Yes, I am really excited to be here. I always love talking with librarians because I literally wrote my first book in libraries, and being able to do research for all these different aspects of the books, even though they're fantasy, they're historical fantasy. So I got to just kind of the baseline for things. And the Star Seekers kind of came about because I'm a nerd, basically. I love doing historical research. And when I wrote my first books, I did different, I went just beyond, my first book was set in the 1870s. I went beyond that, just, different decades. And so I penciled in some notes for 1960s. And initially I was going to do Motown at the time, but luckily for me, the Hidden Figures, both the book and movie was announced. I was like, yes, this is exactly what I want because I've always loved NASA. I always aspired to be an astronaut. I always loved the moon and stars and like that. You can see that my stories has the magic system that features in the book involves stars and constellations. So the 1960s was perfect fit to add this elements to it. So I really enjoyed doing the research for the Star Seekers, mainly because I got to dive into all the different aspects of the 1960s I loved and enjoyed. And I also learned some new fun things about it. The Star Seekers is a standalone murder mystery. It's in the same world as the other books. It follows all the main characters are part of the same family. So she's the latest generation, this particular family. Cynthia Rhodes is a engineer at a magical version of NASA. They're doing research into like arcane solutions for the Apollo project, kind of helping how to get us to the moon with magical solutions. So she's doing that. She's also a very busy person because she's a problem solver. She's big into math. She loves looking for solutions, figure out things alongside her mystery solving things. And whenever there is an interesting problem, she gets herself wrapped into it. One of these things is like she's also a co-host to a magical television show that her cousin kind of runs because he owns a television station, and he basically asked her to take part of it because he's like she knows the best thing about magic around, and she mostly does it even though she's busy because the co-host is a very dashing archaeologist who she has an interesting history together with. Well, basically, the central mysteries of the story kind of kicks off due to two kind of seemingly this unrelated events. First being a arcane museum curator who gets cursed at a television station the same night they're filming a show, and within a few days, a coworker of hers at the magical NASA facility dies in a seemingly a lab accident. These two events kind of propel them to the mystery together that that they kind of dive into things to figure out what's going on out in the world and see how much it's connected and just what they could do to tackle what's the central mystery or whether it's something that's going to impact the NASA space program or come more closer to home. Throughout the story, I get to tackle very different subplots because I always like to have a really good round cast of characters. I mentioned Cynthia's cousin, Sid Harris, who happens to be the child of the main characters in my previous book, The Improviser, who owns a television station. He kind of runs a television show that brings her crew of friends together. One of them being Mavis Sinclair, who's kind of inspired by the food gurus of the time period, whether it's Edna Lewis or Frida the Ninth. I took a lot of inspiration for her. She also has like her own television show, food cooking show at the same time. And then also related to the magical education show is the other friend, Wallace Nichols, who's a child psychologist, who's also a friend with the love interest of Theodore Danner, and it's all it's a I love that. I love diving into television at that particular time, to dive into the Sesame Street, as I'm calling it, as the element, because it was fun to research into what was Sesame Street like, how it's a magical education could be like, how I could transport that into the magical education aspect, and use that subplot to kind of go different directions, because not only does it a good way to get the friend friend group together. It also ties into the other aspects of Cynthia's backstory, where she's currently like looking after her much younger sisters, and because of different various families, like incidents that kind of that you get revealed throughout the story. And it's how she knows she teaches them, because she's looking after sisters, and also because the sisters, we get other aspects of like movements student movements at the time, other aspects of the 1960s. And so I always have fun like bringing in the different subplots together, weave into not just the mystery but everything else around it, because I feel even as we dive into history, there's much a lot of fun things to explore. So you see a lot of that in the book. There's also, if anyone who'd read the previous books, yes, even though the standalone, you could see cameos from the other previous books. They're the neat nods and winks at things together. Because I always, luckily enough, I wrote these things pretty much closely together, so I can kind of weave certain things in. And I always say some of these things I write are mostly fun for me. They're like, oh, I'm sneaking this little joke in here for me. But I'm excited to, have this book out in the world, because it's like I said, all my favorite things I love to explore and dive deeper into.
Thank you so much. You do so much in this book, and
Yes.
so masterfully, and I'm really excited for people to read it. It is on sale January 6th.
Yes.
So I'm going to welcome everybody else back on now, and yeah, we'll do some questions.
January 6th, 2026, which is
Yeah.
like 2026 is almost here. Isn't that insane?
Yes, it's
Getting used to 2025. Thank you.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be writing 25 in my calendar like on
I think
for
working
a
in
year.
publishing makes me feel like I'm already in 2026. I don't know, like all the books that are coming on sale are so in my head that like once we hit 2027, I'm gonna be like, it's 2028. Like so yeah, so thank you all. I was wondering a question for all of you. Um whoever wants to speak first may talk a little bit about your writing process. Whether you're an intricate plotter or like Lainey, what is the term you always use? Somebody
Not me, but plotter or pantser. Like, do you plot? Do you kind of go by the seat of your pants? Yeah.
So whoever feels moved to speak first, go ahead.
I'll go. I would say I'm a pantser just in life in general. My kids would say I just jump off the deep end of swimming pools without looking if there's water. I'll figure that out later when I get to the bottom. But I would say for this book, and to a certain extent, hula history really kind of confined me, and so like I like to do puzzles, and so it's basically like I have these walls that I have to kind of stay within, and so I think the process for writing the POHAKU was very research heavy, and then it had to stop being that because the research was so fun that I kind of had to press pause on all of those years of doing that and go away somewhere. I will say I can't write first drafts at home. There's too much, and go away to a residency or something and really kind of let the story take over, and then go back and interweave, make sure that my dates line up in the history and all of that. So I think for this it was a little bit of both.
I'll go. For me, I've tried both. I've tried just writing without planning, and I've tried being really structured in my planning. And I find that I have a lot more fun as a writer if I don't plan it out too carefully, if I don't know where it's going. That for me, and letting the characters kind of take the story, and then coming back for draft two and fixing all of the things that maybe need tweaking to make it run with a nice plot. But I think, yeah, for me, it's quite an organic process, just writing, getting it all out there, and then going back with my kind of plotting hat on.
For me, luckily, since I write mysteries, I kind of start with the end. I need to figure out who did it, like why, and of course, figure out the victim. And that's kind of like I set the scene of where I'm going. But when I'm writing the first draft, I think I'll write maybe about the first third, maybe almost a half, like just the basic, because that's the easy part, because that's just the setup. That's just getting to know the characters. And once I've hit the middle, I always know when I hit it, and that's why I need to start outlining like what happens in the end or what scenes. And I also have like certain I call tentpole scenes I write towards. That I had these kind of most of the reasons like I'm writing the book in the first place. I have these big scenes I'm writing towards. And I think after I finished that first draft, it's just the revision part where I'm like moving scenes around, figuring out how my weird brain works, but putting these things together. Sometimes I'll switch things from beginning to the end and do several rounds of revisions until basically I feel until like I figure out I'm done. I can just basically kicking the tires. I'm nearly done with it. But it's always well, of course you always say you're not done with it until it's printed, basically, because there's always something else you want to fix.
I would say I'm the opposite of Jasmine in that
Mm.
I am incredibly planful in life. And again, thinking as you mentioned your kids, my kids would laugh at the idea that I was not a planning type of person. In writing, I cannot plan anything. I mean, I can decide I can get a yellow pad out, but I literally I can have a pen in my hand, hovering over a yellow pad, and next thing I know, I'm just typing. I'm just in the manuscript. And it's always been that way. I'll have some moments that I kind of am thinking about moving toward, or I'll have a feeling of kind of a shape. But it's very much that E.L. Doctorow thing of you're driving through the forest on a foggy night and you can only see what's illuminated by
Mm.
your headlights. But in that way, you can go on quite a journey.
Yeah, I find it so interesting hearing every author and how they do it a little bit differently, but at the end, like have this product that, like the book gets written. And Anne, I have a follow-up question because someone in the chat asked, I know you're talking earlier about the process of writing this book, and they were like, well, how long did it take to write this book? So that's what I wanted to know.
Well, it's funny. I had been struggling with other books. I mentioned that earlier on. For a number of years that were kind of awful. And I wrote the first draft of this book in 4 months, which is just like unheard of for me. I've never done anything like that before. And in fact, the entire thing, multiple drafts was finished in less than a year. And that's just for context, it took me 10 years to write my first novel.
Hey, that is so interesting. Jasmine, I wanted to ask you about, kind of writing these complex relationships in uh, a saga like this. How do you approach writing these relationships between generations of women in the story? Because they all, they're a pivotal role. There would be no book without them. So how is that?
Yeah, I think the same approach with a pantser versus a plotter. I think I know until I'm actually writing it. And the best part is when, as Grace alluded to, like when the characters start taking over and kind of telling you who they are. But I think for this specifically, because these women have to pass down this story and have to they all have a different relationship with the POHAKU as time is changing and the circumstances are changing and the needs of society and the expectations of women, change so much over time. Like what we want for our children, our daughters, was very different than what my grandmother might have thought she wanted for my mom, and that kind of thing. So I kind of always had to keep that context in mind when thinking about who these women were. I let the only thing, kind of the preconceived thing that I went in knowing about these characters was what time they were in, what was being expected of them, and what they wanted in spite of what was being expected of them. And then let kind of that mess play out.
Let them talk to you. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
So, Grace, I'm curious why you chose these two characters to tell the story from their point of view for most of the book. Like you focused on the mother-daughter relationship, but there are, like you said, other people who are going through this process. So I wondered why you wanted to tell it from really Amelia's point of view.
Yeah, so actually, originally, when I first started writing the novel, I wrote, I think it was the opening 6 chapters from Lucas and Noah's point of view. So that's where I started. And the more I wrote of them, and I loved writing them, and
Mhm.
their stories were really dear to me, but the more I wrote them, the more obvious it became that I should be writing about the mother and the daughter. I think there's a few reasons. So I had personal experience with growing up with someone with Alzheimer's, so I was able to draw on that. And I also I think my personal fear of watching someone losing someone so slowly was something I was really able to draw on, and that I thought I can relate to the mother-daughter side of things. I can relate to that fear, and it just seemed like the obvious choice, and maybe the most. Maybe not actually. They're all quite dire situations, but probably the one that to me scared me the most.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. Mm, thank you.
Well,
We have a question for everyone. When you are writing, and anyone can jump in, or if you don't have anything to say, that's fine too. But when you're writing, do you discuss things as you go along while writing, or with anyone, or do you prefer to kind of keep it within yourself?
I'll jump in on that one
mhm,
because it's always been one way and then it
mhm,
changed this book. I've never wanted to talk about my work with anybody at all or shown a draft until
mhm,
I've gotten a full draft done. And with this novel, I think maybe because of, I'm going to mention it again, the really hard time I'd been having with other
mhm,
books, I decided with 40 pages that I wanted to get some feedback from my husband, who is my first reader and also a writer. And um, he read it, I don't know how to put this. He read it very gently, and he's really only
mhm,
had one note, and that note was, I think Elliot needs to go into some male spaces. He needs to interact with other men. And that was a fantastic note, and it was the
mhm.
only one that I got. But it sort of emboldened me. It made me think, well, maybe being so sealed off while I'm working, maybe I can
Mhm.
open the windows a little bit next time.
I think I also too don't really talk, and this in depth. I might talk in general, like when I'm in conversations, like with family, like sister or friends, like that. But actually, when I'm working on and stuff like that, and I'll basically ramble on about whatever I'm working on. It's in really broad general terms, and they're just nodding along. Okay, it sounds nice, sort of thing. But I guess I do a lot, like, thinking about myself, or sometimes, taking walks or staring at walls. I feel like staring at walls is like a crucial part of my writing process, because it's just having the pause. Not always the act of writing is, of course, needed, but also just taking a pause to do things that aren't necessarily writing adjacent allows you to kind of think and work your way through things. And like I always feel like my best ideas kind of come like when I'm not actively writing. I'm either washing dishes or taking a walk or just all the stuff, getting ready for bed, all these things. That's when the ideas come together, that knot of the problem kind of untwines, unravels, and oh, that idea is here.
I think for me, I tend to share more when I get really excited about something that I've worked out. So it probably confuses everyone I talk to because they don't know anything else. But I'm like, oh my God, I've worked it out. And then I'll get really excited about that and want to discuss how that's going to affect the rest of the novel. But in terms of the novel in general, I don't really share too much. I think it's such a personal experience when you're doing your draft that
Mm.
I often worry that too many voices could disrupt it. So yeah, I think I'm more private unless it's a really exciting moment.
Yeah, I think for me, I when I get an idea or when I start seeing it kind of come to life on page, when I've hit like 50 pages and it's increasing instead of decreasing, I get really excited. And I think I've always kind of believed that if I talk too much about it at that stage, I'd talk the excitement out of it. And so I'm kind of, that's like sacred to me, where I won't, I don't know if it's just like a superstitious thing, but I don't want to talk the energy out of it. Like I need to
Mm.
get it out. And if I get it out verbally, I might not need to get it out on page. But with the POHAKU, actually, I had started writing this long before I knew how to write. And because it's such an interesting,
Hmm.
like it's such an ambitious a kind of structure for a book, I really cut my teeth and like learned how to write by learning how to writing really badly. And so I worked on this for about 8 years and didn't know anything about publishing or the world of it. And so started kind of trying to write this horrible thing and then put it out there. And so I ended up talking about it a lot to agents and publishing houses. And I would always get kind of this close to almost getting something. And they'd say, it's not quite there. And finally I reached a point where I was like, I'm done. I can't write this. I don't know what I was thinking anyway. I'm going to shelve this. Right at that moment, I got an offer for a residency at Hedgebrook, and I ended up going there and writing hula. And so after that, I kind of got the confidence or the courage to come back to this, and I completely rewrote it. And so in a weird way, this book I've talked about and I've had in my back pocket for so long that it actually feels weird to like talk about it now as a thing like other people know about it.
I think that's such a theme when we talk to authors too, of like their desk book is kind of what they say. Like I put it in the desk and I never came back, but then I came back to it. And so
Yeah.
I think everyone can always take the lesson that you just like don't give up. It's such an inspiring premise too, to hear like someone who wrote and wrote and wrote, and then, if it didn't, you come back to it, but like 8 years, 10 years, it keep going. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I always find it very inspiring. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And also, Nicole, I love what you said. Like, you ever have like your best idea in the shower and you're like, damn it, I need to write this down at
Yes.
like not a convenient time. I actually wanted to ask you, Nicole, about
Yes.
you really blend genres really
Yes.
seamlessly. You have, this historical element, the fantasy, the mystery. Can you talk a little bit about
Mhm.
the this magic world and how you built that and how it kind of plays into the mystery and the historical elements?
Yeah, I kind of always kind of been each story figuring out what time period I'm working with, like if it's 1870s, if it's 1960s and whatnot, and just kind of like kind of building out what it is and getting into the basic research, but kind of layering in when I start layering in the magic, it's more like where does the magic fit make sense? Like I want to do like kind of emphasize certain arts at the time. It's not just like slapping magic. There's magic stuff against this thoughtfully thinking about where it goes. For example, for the STARSEEKERS, since it's more in modern age, you have more technology. I had to think really carefully like where I wanted magic to be in. And sometimes it's it's we having an arcane history museum where we're talking about the history of magical artifacts, or just seeing it more enveloped in all the different things we're doing, and just being smart about it and think of the social aspect of it. Luckily, I had built this world of figuring out as I gone through time with each book. I kind of got to be more intricately layered and think differently like that. And the mystery aspect is actually the easiest part to add in there because it's more like find a dead body and just more of like being smart of how I always feel like even though a stories are filled with magic, the magic doesn't solve the mystery. There's no like magical spell that'll tell you, oh, this person killed them and like for reasons why the magic's just a tool to help them solve the mystery, and of course getting the magical hijinks and the fun stuff I want to do with it. So just thinking smart of how all pieces connect well together and make sure that they work together and don't work to undermine each aspect of the story.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yes.
While we're on the topic of genre, in the chat, Kim asked a question for everybody. Is there a genre that you haven't written but would like to try?
No.
Yeah, that is a complete answer.
Yes.
Anything that's not historical for me.
Yeah, no, I love it.
I might want to try writing a children's book at some point. Just because I'm a teacher and I'm around them a lot, and they're so magical. So I might try and do that one day. But yeah.
Yeah, I second that. I've been getting the itch to write more children middle grade books. I have a niece now. She just turned 2 and turned into a book reader and whatnot. So it's like I guess I actually got a good picture of her around her birthday. Like, she's wearing it. Like, she has this crown on. She's sitting on top of this stuffed unicorn. She has this backpack with an adventure. I'm like, oh, this is just a great image for this middle grade fantasy story. And also, I guess because I turned into a book reader, I want to be able to, write a book that she could read on her bookshelves one day too. And the silliness of that.
I think for me too, I think coming from many families of migrant workers, a lot of what I inherited were just recipes. So I've always
Oh,
dreamed of doing a cookbook.
oh.
I love that idea. I
I
think
can't wait to have you all on and talk about all of these books once they're written. That sounds really great.
yeah,
Also, we'll cook because cookbook, we gotta cook.
yeah, I love a cookbook idea. That's so fun. Lainey?
Yeah, so I think we always get the question of what you're reading, but before that, before we go to that one, is there anything anyone wants to say that hasn't been said? Now's the time, or if there are any questions, get them in. But I think the perennial question is, what are you reading right now? And some people go out of that scope and say, like, I'm watching this because it gives me joy. So whatever you would like to give us, but if you have a reading recommendation, Grace types faster than anyone I've ever known to make a catalog for our viewers, and they can see your recommendations so they don't have to write them very fast. So
I'm fast, but I appreciate it if you're a little slower than maybe you normally would be.
So I don't know if anyone wants to jump in or I can call, but
Okay, I'll start. I'm currently reading We'll Prescribe You Another Cat, the follow-up to the previous one that came out last year. So I was just delighted it came out. And I think the next on deck is Tinker Tailor Spy. I guess everyone keeps talking about the book. I haven't read it yet by John le Carre. So I was like, oh, I'm not. Oh, that's next on once I finish that one. So
I'm currently reading Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang. Um, I'm loving it. I'm about halfway through and things are getting really intense. It's for anyone that hasn't read it, it's about a musician who is kind of thrust into the beauty world, and it's all about this driving for perfection and how far humans might go. And I'm finding it fascinating. I'm loving it.
So the book I've been recommending, even though I read it a bit ago, but I just can't pass up another opportunity to mention it, is Loved and Missed by Susie Boyd. Just fantastic, amazing novel about a woman and her daughter who's struggling with drug addiction and her granddaughter. And that makes it sound much heavier than it is. It's just a beautiful book. And I'm in my 60s, so I have to actually look at my phone to find out what I've been reading. The other thing I would mention is The Safe Keep. Has anyone read The Safe Keep? I thought that was a great book. And then also Helen Garner. I read a book called The Spare Room, which I thought was really, really great.
I am on a Susan Choi kick with the other half of the world. Although I finished Audition and now I'm just finishing up Flashlight, which is so different but so good. It's really good. Highly
great
recommend.
title.
Repeat the author's name really quick. Sorry.
Susan Choi.
Okay.
I love that title.
Yeah, very good. It's about South Korea and Japan and
Mm.
that complicated stuff. Although very different from like a pachinko. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily historical. It's very good. Very different.
Wow. These are great. I mean, TBR is growing by the minute, but I think that we have there's a lot of love. I think we got to most questions, and I think it's about our time is almost done. Sadly, I would stay on, but thank you for taking the time to talk to us. And I just want to read out pub dates one more time. So we have Some Bright Nowhere, November 11th, The Merge, November 11th, the POHAKU, sorry, February 3rd, and the Starseekers, January 6th. So You have lots to read. All of the e-galleys are available. And I just want to thank everyone for writing really amazing stories and putting them in the hands of librarians and for taking the time to talk to them today.
Thank you, librarians,
Thank
for all
you.
that you do. And thank you,
Yes.
Grace and Lainey. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
thank
so
you,
much.
everyone.
Lady, we have some housekeeping if we
Mhm.
want to
Yeah,
reveal
sorry.
some.
Thank you for reminding me. So we're gonna, and there they are one more time. Beautiful. The really beautiful covers, and I can't wait to see Starseekers. So I'm very excited for that little tease.
Yes.
So the big moment everyone's waiting for, our next event, October 14th at 7 p.m. We have Brad Meltzer, we have T. Kara Madden, and Justin C. Key and Claire Douglas. So a little bit of everything for everyone. We're super excited. So join us on October 14th and look out because we're going to send reading material early so you can dive in. And surprise, we have the next one, November 4th. It is an hour earlier, just take note. And we have Lake Effect by Cynthia D'Aprix Sweeney, who is our lead read for the season. And that's an internal program voted by the Salesforce. And then we have Caller Unknown, Jillian McAllister, Evil Genius, Claire Oshetsky, Peter Stark's The Lost Cities of El Norte, so a little nonfiction in there. I think we have a really good range of a lot of different books, and it's just going to be two lovely evenings. So be sure to put it on your calendar. If you're on Crowdcast, you'll get reminders. If you're on Facebook, you'll get updates on the event. So just RSVP. And of course, we're always here for you. And thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Wanted to call one last comment out because we just got a comment from Samantha King saying, "Can't wait to purchase all these books for our patrons." So, ending on a good note.
Yes.
Thank you
The
all.
best note.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.